So we have joining us, we have him on Skype, it's good to see him too, Senator Bob Hall. He's a Texas state senator, may I just say, a very popular Texas state senator, especially with conservatives. He began serving in the Texas Senate in 24. He actually won a runoff election in 2014. He has been serving in the Texas State Senate since then. He is a hero of conservatives, among many reasons, because he's actually willing to take on the issues that are challenging, that are going to cause the left to attack you. He'll take on, for example, the electric grid issue, one of those issues the left mocks about and makes fun of and says, oh, come on, electric grid, what are you talking about? Don't worry about that. He will take on the hard issues. He is a clear-thinking constitutional conservative, a patriot, and we're talking with him today on the question of what should the legislatures in Texas and other red states be doing between now and the next election time in 2022, when the entire U.S. House of Representatives is up, many statewide officials will be up. What can we do to clean up our election processes in Texas and elsewhere? The topic is election integrity, and I believe we have Senator Bob Hall. Hello, sir.
Well, hello, Debbie, and thank you so very much for having me back on again. This is a real honor and pleasure. Glad to be here.
Great to have you on. I will tell you, remind our listeners, last time you were here in person, which was even more fun, but I know you're down in Austin doing your Texas State Senator duty. I meant to say your Texas District 2, right? District 2?
That is correct. Senate
okay.
District 2.
Okay, so I actually called you the other day because I wanted to ask, I've been calling a variety of people in the Texas legislature or who are active, trying to say, what are you all doing on the topic of election integrity? What do we really need to do in these 2 years? And so I'm so glad we connected. And you have actually a great position paper, which I am reading from, but about the kind of arenas or areas of law where we could potentially see fraud occurring and what the legislature can do to handle that. So I first want to ask Matt the Wonderful to quick put up that little grid I sent you. We'll take it back down in a second, but everyone can see this. Okay, at the top, vote manipulation, threat opportunities. He's got pre-election. I'm reading that pink row, the top row. Pre-election A, B, early voting, C, 4 days downtime, D, election day, and E, post-election. So these are, and then below that in blue are the vote manipulation mitigation strategies. So this is from his paper. So now that we've shown that, we'll probably put it up again in a minute. So bringing back Senator Bob Hall. So tell me, sir, as you get started, we have that chart up, but maybe we'll start this way. What's the most important thing you think the Texas legislature should do in the arena of election integrity?
Debbie, it's almost hard to pinpoint a thing that needs to be done, because what you were talking about earlier, or what's going on right now, is the result of massive voter fraud that is taking place in a system that has not really been updated in many places. In Texas, very little has been done to bring it into the modern world. And we now have people that are different than what we had when some of these laws were originally written, because they're written around assuming there's at least a modicum of integrity in the people who run the elections. And while there is with a lot of them, it only takes a very few to take charge of and circumvent the intent of the voters. And so we have changes that need to be made in essentially every aspect of voting. The mail-in ballot system that we have in Texas has holes in it that has allowed for easy voter harvesting that's been taking place. We have people that are now in jail over massive voter harvesting. We need to change the system to one that really only provides mail-in ballots to people for two reasons. One, either they are disabled and cannot go to the polls, or they're out of the county or will be out of the county during early voting or on election day. That's a change, and we need to have more verification of the ballot and limit it to those they must be requested, not sent out. Another area that needs to be addressed is the issue of the voting machines. While we do have a number that do have a paper trail in Texas, we need to have all of our ballots so that there is a paper trail. That is, that every vote that's generated has a ballot, paper ballot with it that can be used as a backup to prevent vote electronic manipulation. And I could talk about that for a long time today in there. But the other is our voter rolls. We need to have a system that regularly and accurately keeps our voter rolls up to date. We need to know who leaves the state. We need to know who has died and has moved within the state. And so we need to have a system that will do just that on a regular basis without it being a special exercise. What we've learned from the reports we've gotten from from our poll watchers is that we need to tighten up on our rules and laws that have that allow poll watchers access to watching what the folks in the voting counting system are doing. The way the current rules are written, which require them to allow the poll watchers to be there, doesn't mean that they actually get to see anything. We have report after report of poll watchers being in the vote counting room, and where the election judge, which is when it's a Democrat, will put up a petition and have the watchers sitting on one side of the petition and the counting going on the other side. That we can't put up with. And what we've learned out of this last session and watch what things that happened in other states is that we need to have more transparency and accountability in what happens in handling ballots. Right now, you're not allowed to take photographs, hardly even allowed to take notes or video or any videos. The only place that we should prohibit photographs and videos are of the people actually in the voting booth marking their ballots. All other aspects of the process should be video recorded and put up on the internet while it's being done, particularly in the vote counting. That is something that would be a major change, and some of this is not going to be cheap to do, but it's the only way we can make sure that the intent of the voters is what happens as a result. Another major area is looking at eliminating opportunities. You had a chart up when we first started, which is from a study that we did last year that identified where were the opportunities for error and for fraud. And it really doesn't matter whether a mistake is made accidentally for whatever reason or is intentionally done. It changes the intent of the voters. And so we identified those locations, those time frames in the whole process from the beginning of early voting out through election day and counting the votes where there was opportunity for mistakes to easily be made or for fraud to take place. And one of the major ones is the process where here in Texas we have actually three sets of voting. We have mail-in ballots, we have early voting, and then we have election day. I've already talked about the mail-in ballots, but the early voting is separate. It's almost like it's a whole separate process. And there's a big 4-day gap between the end of early voting and election day that serves no purpose at all. So one of our bills, at least one of them, will propose that we merge early voting and election day and just have an election period. And so the last day of elections would be election day. And then the week or 10 days or 2 weeks, whatever we decide is needed by the public in order to handle the volume of folks voting would be in front of that. And what that does for us is that it then allows us to then also require that when voting machines are put out in the precincts to vote, they are left where they're initially put until the end of the election. And on election day, they can add machines, but those that are out there cannot be moved around or taken to other locations. Then by doing that, we can box in the protection of the integrity of those machines by requiring that a zero tape be printed just before the polls open at the beginning of early voting. That tape is verified by both parties, the judges, the alternate judge, and any poll watchers that are there. Then the doors are open. We go through the week of early and just continue through election day. And then when the polls close on election day, we run what's called a tally tape. That is, before the machines are moved, before anybody can do anything to it, we determine what was the vote, what are the votes in that machine at that precinct right there at that location. And doing that, again, the tape is signed by the judge, the alternate judge, and any witnesses that are there, the poll watchers. And so we now have a hard paper copy verifying there were no votes in the machine and what voted, and then we can compare that with the number of people that showed up at the polls, determine that the number of votes cast equal the number of folks that came in there. And so that eliminates that 4-day period between the end of early voting, where we have found that the memory cards were being downloaded and reloaded with votes to change the outcome. We had a system that matched exactly what Stalin liked about the way the Russians did it when he said, I don't care who votes, I don't care how many times they vote, all I care about is who counts the votes. And that was what we were having in our major counties here, that was resulting in the vote being not what the people had intended for it to be. And so that's kind of those are the major items. There's another, we're working with the Heritage Action folks out of DC that have done a lot of work on that. We have all of their recommendations, and the several groups here in Texas that have been watching elections for the last several cycles. They've gathered a lot of data. We've compiled all of their information, all of their inputs into a single document of the things that need to be done here in Texas. And that list is now over in Ledge Council for our bill that we will be filing as soon as we get it back from Ledge Council.
I'm glad to hear it's at Ledge Council. I was going to tell you, I know that people can generate a list of bullet points. Here's what should happen. But Ledge Council in Texas, I'm sure there's a similar thing in every state legislature. It puts the language or the goals that you tell them that you want put in the bill, and it writes it in a way that fits into existing state law, words it properly, tells it where it should fit in. Okay, so Senator Hall, is a minor question, but back to the tally tape. Are you saying that if you had a machine put in for early voting, and so it was turned on, early voting started, that same machine, you run the zero tape at the start of early voting, and then you just continue that, and so the next time you run a tally is at the end of voting on election day? It's one tally for, okay, early voting till the end. Okay.
But so there's no reason. Early voting is just taking the 24-hour or the 12-hour period of election day and just adding time to it. And so there is no purpose of early voting except to provide more time for people to be able to vote. That is, there's no reason to divide. I know no political analysts look at the ratio and the numbers between early votes and election day and so on, but it has nothing to do with the outcome of where we're trying to get for the election.
Okay, and on early voting in Texas, I know you alluded to this, but in Texas, and I think other states too, they have an early voting period, and usually in Texas it runs through Thursday or Friday or something, and then the following Tuesday is a real election day. Getting at the point, there's a period of time between end of early voting and election day, and that is at least where other experts I've had on my show have said that is when the opportunity exists, if there were to be electronic manipulation of the voter tabulation software, to get in the machines and change those early votes that no one is yet seeing. And so they're being changed at that point, and you're kind of giving them a window of time to do that. Is that so? That this what you're describing, ending the dividing period between early voting and regular voting, would reduce the chance of that occurring, right?
Absolutely, yes. It takes that time that they would have to do it, because now when you close the polls, within a few minutes, that memory card should be at Central County. Now, I mean, I say within a few minutes, and most of what we have in Texas, it isn't that far. But whatever the driving time from the precinct into Central County is about all it should take to get that card there.
Okay, one suggestion I saw, you mentioned Heritage, and I've been getting emails from numerous groups, but I think this one was Heritage, was talking about the idea there's no reason to tally the early votes prior to or ahead of the end of election day. I think there had been some tallying done in the past that was going to just supposedly make it faster and easier, but what you're describing, no one would be tallying early voting totals until the end of actual election day. Is that correct?
That's right, but that's a two-edged sword. We did try to get the tally tapes run for early election when we had the 4-day gap, because there were many of us that felt it didn't matter whether everybody knew where the votes were after early election. What was more important was be able to make sure that nobody got that memory card during those 4 days and changed it. And we worked on that and could never get that happen. So we came up with the idea, well, we don't even need that 4 days, rather than fight for this tallying of the tapes, which the law does require to be done, except the law is kind of contradictory that says you can't count votes early. So we do have a problem with it already. But by just eliminating that 4 days in there, or any gap between it really removes that opportunity to manipulate the card, and does what needs to be done. It makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, there is no reason for the gap there.
Okay, one other thing you mentioned, not to jump around here, you mentioned about the idea of the voter rolls. And it's such a crazy thing. You would think in this modern day, when we're all connected by the internet and data's online, that the moment if I went into the voting location, or into my, driver's license place and said, hey, I'm moving from Dallas County to, Tarrant County, that my getting a new license and my new address in Tarrant County, it should immediately be connected to the voting election department, so that they don't have to wait and rely on the person who is doing the moving to have to remember, oh yeah, I should let them know about election day. I should let them my voting records get changed. You're saying that's not currently occurring automatically?
No, that's one of the problems. We don't have a good in the systems connected. Now, we have made some changes, and we have become a part of ALEC, which will be working with other states to purge the vote, to get multiple inputs to be able to purge when people move to other states. And we are looking at tying in the DPS software so that we can be more efficient. You got to remember, Debbie, in Texas, when you back off and look at it from the 30,000-foot level, we've got 254 counties in Texas. And that means we've got 254 election processes in Texas. And we have it for counties that have millions of people in them, like Harris and Dallas and Bexar County, and then some of our East and West Texas small counties that have less than 1,000 people in them. And so we've got to have a system that recognizes the difference in size, but we've got to come up with a statewide process for consistency, so we have accountability and transparency in our system.
Okay, another show I was going to jump in on. I understood from some of the other guests been on my show that in the original, when the allegations were coming up about electronic interference with the voting machines, one early defense some of the manufacturers of the voting machines were saying was, we're not even connected to the internet. There's no way this could have happened because we don't have connection to the internet. And yet we had then experts who've been on my show, other shows, saying, no, actually, as part of the setup process, when you set the machine up, you are connected to the internet. Is it feasible and workable to require, as a matter of state law, to say no voting machine can be connected to the internet, or does it need to be connected for certain reasons?
No, the machines, should never have to be connected. One of the excuses that's used is we ran out of a problem, we need maintenance. And so they'll bring in the vendor, and we had that happening in Dallas. That was used as an excuse, and where the vendor came in with a laptop and had it connected to the machine all throughout county. But no, absolutely not. What we have to do is make sure it's not just that they aren't connected to the internet. They need to be not internet capable, nor do they need to be Bluetooth. Bluetooth is just as much a threat as internet. And so we need to have machines that are not connected. But the good thing about it is, by these other procedures that I've talked about, having hard copy, having the paper ballots, having the tally tapes that are printed before they get to the opportunity where they could manipulate the vote, we have a fallback where we could say, well, I skipped that, is requiring a minimum audit, random audit, to validate that what's coming out of the voting machine, the counting machine, is consistent with what the tally tape was at the precinct. And so we are, even reducing the meaning of it if a machine is connected to the internet.
I love that point. Another one you mentioned I wanted to follow up on was, and I'm probably pushing my time limit with you, but okay, one more question. So you mentioned the idea of having video cameras, and it's so interesting. Originally, it was a wise idea, and people were very careful about the idea that you didn't, in polling places, want to make any voter feel concerned that their vote wasn't private, that they go in to vote and there is a security camera and they're going to see that, even though I told everyone I'm going to vote for X, I'm going to vote for Y. So you're trying to protect their privacy. But you're saying, and I'm completely agreeing with you, that antiquated concern, we have to protect the privacy of voters. And so the camera isn't aimed right at to see who Jane Doe is voting for. But the idea of having the entire process videoed and holding on to those videos, I mean, it made a huge difference in Georgia, where only because I guess it was a security tape in the building was on, they were able to see that there were, after the counters and the watchers were told we're done for the night and people left, they were pulling boxes of ballots out from underneath the table and still counting them. So do you anticipate, I'll say it in the positive way, I anticipate and feel concerned there'll be people saying you can't have video cameras in polling locations or in counting places. And I hope that may be a big hurdle, but I think it's one of the best ways to cause people to realize the days of any kind of cheating are over because you're being watched. So do you anticipate that's going to be controversial?
Oh, listen, Debbie, there will be pushback on everything we're going to do. And the theme on the pushback is they will find some way to tie everything we try to do to protect the integrity of the vote so that every vote counts, but they will try to find a way to call it voter suppression.
Yep.
And that's their key thing. They'll make that, and it doesn't have to be true, but the left doesn't care. As you said earlier, they don't care about the truth. They don't care about honesty. They don't care about integrity. All they want to do is they want to win. They know they cannot win, particularly here in Texas, honestly at the ballot in a heads up with our principles and values of the Republican Party versus the principles or lack of principles of value and integrity in the Democrat Party with the people of Texas. They cannot win head to head on those arguments. So they've got to find a way to cheat. And it's the leadership in there that's pushing that has taken over the Democrat. This party we have today and there is not the Democrat Party that existed in our parents' day or just a few years ago. The Democrat Party in America today has been taken over from the inside and rotted by the Socialist Party. The Democrat Party is really the Socialist Party. They just haven't changed the marquee. They still are called Democrats, but what's controlling the party, what's running the party, what's behind what you're seeing in Washington with these absurd hearings that are going on up there and the outlandish claims that were being made about what happened is by the socialist arm of the party that is driving it and leading it. And so it will be that whole mentality is going to be even worse in our uh, election system. Yes, they will say that, but the other side of what one of the reasons for not having the cameras that made really good sense was that was one in there with the personal voting was the flip side of that, because we had the problem of unions paying bonuses to people that could show they voted the way the union wanted to. And so one of the arguments against people taking a photo of their ballot was to go collect. Now, we saw a version of that 2 years ago in the elections when the issue on school choice was such a major issue. We had teachers that were being offered rewards for voting. Now, they couldn't confirm their voting, but it was good enough to make sure they showed up at the polls. And so we watched time after time of teachers showing up at the polls to vote and taking a selfie of themselves in front of the poll so they could go back and prove to their principal or superintendent, who was offering them some kind of reward, whether it was something as simple as an extra day of wearing blue jeans to school, or a day off, or whatever it was, but it was to go back and prove that they had been there. So
wow.
it's not the voting that we need, it's the counting. Again, it's the counting of the votes is what we have to protect.
Okay, Senator Hall, you did this paper, and it may just be an internal document, but is there a way that people who are curious about what you're doing and what you're proposing, is there a way they can find this online so they can read your proposals? And actually, to be really clear, this is a very nationwide show. I have listeners in every state, and I hear from them all the time. So some of them, I'm going to be urging them next, ought to be thinking about going to their own legislatures and saying, what do you guys think about these ideas? So is there a way to get access to what you've prepared in terms of what you're pushing for?
Yes, we will have this information up on our website. It's simply senatorbobhall.com, all spelled out, senatorbobhall.com. They can go to my Facebook page. We're working on right now Facebook posts. We've been doing them on a regular basis, as you're well aware of, fighting this issue with the COVID, with the doctors getting the truth out, that there are actually therapeutics out there that exist, that people don't need to fear the COVID. The therapeutics will get them, are effective. We've done a number of videos on. We're going to be doing videos on this. We'll probably have your show up, or pushing it through our Facebook page.
Great, we'll take it.
That's, Senator Bob Hall, and they can go there. They can get it. They can contact our office here. So we will share this information. I'm already talking to some legislatures from other states. We've been talked about it, about sharing information, and we'll be glad to have provide the information. They can call us at our Capitol office here. Phone number is 512-463-0102.
Okay, that is actually a sign. That's a great ending for your interview. That's a sign of a committed public servant to give out your office number on live on air. So I commend you for that. And also for all of our listeners, senatorbobhall.com.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah, okay. I urge you to go read this paper. It's very, very good. And Senator Hall, I know you have a million things you're supposed to be doing. I really thank you so much for taking time to run through all of this very important issue today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Debbie. And let me say, I really appreciate you and what you do on your show. The fantastic guests you've had. I've met some of the doctors through your show that you've had on, that added to the group of working on some of the other folks on these issues that are so important for us to be able to get our country back to the Judeo-Christian principles of protecting individual liberty that our founding fathers intended. And that's what we need to be driving for. I appreciate what you do in getting that message out. God bless you, and God bless Texas and America.
Thank you, Senator Hall. Thank you for your kind words and for joining me today. Thank you so much. That was one great American, my very fine friends. Great American. Okay, well, we got started late today. We had a little bit of a connection issue, so I'm going to just very quickly run through something. I called this segment, what did I call it? How to Stand Up. I cannot tell you how many emails I get, notes I get, friends I get, meetings I go to. And what people really want to know, they say, I listened to your show, but tell us what to do. So we talked about election integrity today. I sent Matt the very wonderful, a very short slide. These are things you can do if you, on the election integrity issue. Wherever you are, whatever state, contact your state representatives or your state senator's office. Ask about election integrity legislation that's under consideration this year and get involved in supporting it. Push for reducing or eliminating the early voting period and prohibiting early vote counting, ending the break between early voting and election day, annual mandated cleaning of voter rolls, and interoperability. Just means that the voter rolls get updated automatically when you move and have a new address in your driver's license. And even, when the certificate of death is issued, that department ought to be sending immediately a notice to the election people, removing the names of those people no longer able to vote. Require voter ID with pictures. Strengthen criminal penalties for all aspects of cheating. Second page we have on this, very quickly, is keep electronic voting machines stationary during the entire election period and mandate they have no connection to the internet. Prohibit the transfer of the votes and voter tabulation data to any entity. Insist on saving paper ballots, having paper ballots, first of all, then saving them for a stated period of time after each election. Provide state legislatures with standing to sue. This is a huge one. Legislatures or legislators should have standing to sue granted by statute that say they can sue the election department officials or any other authorities who make decisions related to running the elections that are in any way inconsistent with state law. So bad policies can be stopped in their tracks. Reducing the categories of voters who can vote absentee. Push for in-person voting. We do not have, some states have massive mail-in balloting, but for states where they continue to expand the absentee ballot eligibility, that's just another opportunity for a playground for election fraud. Mandating poll watchers have complete access to watching the vote counters and for a quick judicial remedy for violations. Okay, many, many more things, but those are the ones I put together.